Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight's story is Eyes of a Stranger. The night was normal, like any other. I was a normal man, like any other. My home was like any other. I owned a couch, a coffee table, and a television, for my ass, my feet, and my eyes. It was a normal den in a split-level home on a suburban street. That day I had pushed pencils for 8 hours. It's called adjusting insurance. I had driven home in my used car and eaten my frozen dinner, thus I was primed to unwind with primetime television. The scripts fell flat, even by my expectations, but as they say, if it ain't broke. When I left work, the sun had set. By the first canned laugh, the sky was black. I had dimmed my lights accordingly. My meal, billed as Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes, floated in my stomach. Its odor lingered from my dual microwave sock dryer. The shows ended with previews for future episodes. Next were infomercials. Naturally, sleep called. Conveniently, my couch doubled as my bed. I had only to turn off my TV. Having lost my remote, a modicum of movement was required. Then I laid down and closed my eyes. Pictures played in my mind. The pencils I pushed, the pencil necks with which I pushed them. In time, they faded to a pleasant nothing. I was just on the verge of sleep when I heard it, a sound, a synthesizer's drone, humming faintly in what I thought was my front lawn. Though exhausted, I had to identify it and its origin. I'd only 8 hours to sleep and hated interruptions. Still, I heaved to my feet. Peered through my window and saw only my lawn, nothing else besides the refuse neighborhood children routinely left. Animals avoided my property, preferring my neighbors' yards. The sound ceased. It was only my fridge. My suspicion passed. I was about to retire when at last I saw it, a shadow at the foot of my driveway, solid black with no distinct features. About 5'8" with a medium build. Who? And how could I find out without incident? No one came by at that hour. In fact, no one came by. At best, he was a bum, at worst, a burglar. I could accommodate both, lacking compassion and owning a double-barrel shotgun. I would act only when I knew which he was. The window was dusty. I never cleaned it. I assumed this would prevent eye contact. Wrong as usual. He peered through the glass, and though I could not see his eyes, I could sense them burrowing into mine. Damn it. He had seen me. He knew I was there. Yet something told me he had all along. I saw nothing in him, that is, nothing suspect. He just looked tired and slightly confused. Somehow it transfixed me. I stood frozen, unable to move, to look away. I then noticed. I had not heard his steps as he approached, though everything sounded through my thin walls. Perhaps my ears were just tired. He did not move, even in the slightest. He stood firmly in place, his arms at his sides, like a statue, like a sentinel. Before I had asked, who is this? Now I asked, what? I wondered, what could it, as I had come to call him, be? What did he intend? I hoped something benign. My gun could repel a burglar, my mouth could a bomb. Neither applied in this case. Paranoia set in. I continued to watch, expecting it to advance at any second. Curiously, I did not even think to fetch my weapon. This was just as well, as it did not move forth, not one step. It simply stood in place, staring at me, into me. Maybe, I thought, if I go from the window, he'll go from my lawn. I returned to my couch and watched my clock, counting 10 minutes, then stood and returned to my windows. Again, I had been incorrect. Perhaps I should call the police. Most would have it first, but I was not like most. I preferred to solve my own problems. That night, however, I was not myself. I went to my phone and dialed, finding the cop's number in the phone book. Ring, ring. Hello? An officer groaned. What is your problem? There's a man outside my home. It's been there for a while, I explained, not knowing how to word it. Unless he's being aggressive, we don't care. Zzz. I dropped my phone to the receiver. At that point, I wish it had stepped toward my home. I went to my closet and grabbed my shotgun, then crept to my front door, always keeping one shell for practical purposes. I reached my door and slowly opened it, standing in the precipice. At long last, the figure took a step. I was scared, but also bewildered. It walked stiffly like a robot, like its arms were made of steel. Its feet were quiet on the gravel. I aimed my gun, if only for mental security. As he neared, the moon revealed his features. He was, to my surprise, a normal man, with an average face, with an average shave, and average brown hair cut short and neat into cotton pants and jacket. His eyes were empty, his mouth was flat and pursed. If not for that, he would not have stood out in a crowd. He would not have stood out to me, except for his being in my home at 1 a.m. He did not quicken his pace, reach forth, or show any aggression. He simply approached, his eyes on mine, boring through me. He reached my porch, I reached my limit. I longed to close my eyes, but adrenaline kept them open. He gazed at me. His lips moved, but made no sound I could hear. "What are you saying?" I asked aloud. "What are you telling me?" He did not respond. I closed my door and retreated to the couch, gun in hand. At the very least, I had an excuse to skip work.